Hey traders, welcome back to another market update. Today we are looking at EURUSD. Here on the daily chart, we've got some interesting stuff going on, so let's dive right into it. So we basically have a series of lower highs here on the EURUSD, but interestingly enough, we did have a series of higher lows here, or we had lower highs here and we had higher lows here, right? Well, recently we saw price come down and throw down a lower high here, right? Which is interesting, or a lower low, actually, a lower low here after a lower high here, right? What this is showing us is just based on the structure of this market. As we see more lower highs, as we see more bearish structure, it gives us a better chance, at least in my view, of going to head back down to the previous low. Now we have a big barrier that we've been kind of testing here to see if we can get through that low, which is this supportive area. We've talked about it a couple times here on the updates, okay? So as price comes down into this area, you can see we have seen a bounce so far, but if that fails, if we start to see any signs of this price wanting to break lower, I think there's a pretty good chance that we could see on the lower time frames something like this happen, and there might be some decent trades trading back to the previous low. I still think that the market naturally wants to retest this area and is very likely to do so in the coming days or weeks. So we'll see what happens there on EURUSD. That is a trade that I'm watching for personally. GBP USD is our next one, and what you can see is this one is in a nice uptrending market. What you can notice actually is if we draw this trend line across the top, it looks to me like price may want to head back to retest this area too, and we have some previous resistance areas to think about if we're going to make it up to that point. If we're going to break past this level, I think that that's what you'll probably want to look for. If you're looking for continued bullishness, the really big breakout to watch for would, in my mind, be a break above these areas of resistance. Looking for that retest might be a decent idea to think about, and looking for that continuation up to a trend line level, such as the one we see there up in the 1.2971 level, just in that general area. I still think that there's room for bullishness to continue here on GBP USD. Take a look at the daily chart longer term. You can see we've been back and forth, but this bullishness has been very, very persistent. We saw a lot of bearish strength, but then all of a sudden, when things turned around, they really turned around. And now we start to see a lot of bullishness, and I think it is very possible that we could see another extension to this bullish trend that we currently see playing out. Next up is going to be USDJPY, which is trading at an interesting level. You can see this area here, this area of support. We're watching to see if this area can hold or if we're going to break lower. Now, if price decides to break lower, it's very possible that we actually do see price slipped down to some more significant levels like the one that we saw all the way down here, right around that 101 level, okay? Now, if we don't see that, if we take it to the daily chart right now, you can see we are at a pretty significant level of support. If price holds this area, I think that what we're going to see is if we can break through this previous high here, pretty good chance that we probably want to make our way back to the previous structure highs. The reason I say that is because right now price is in a consolidation phase. So when we do start to see price break out with some strength one way or the other, very likely that we'll get a retest of one of the previous extended levels. Okay, so we'll see if we can get that to play out there on dollar yen. Next up is gold, which gold is still trading near the highs. There's some really interesting things to watch for here on gold, but the biggest to me is, of course, watching for some of the retests or some of the pullback opportunities that may present themselves on gold. So one of my favorite ones to think about would be a pullback here. If we took a fib from the low to the high, one of my favorites would be looking around the 50% retracement level here. What you'll notice is that we have a couple different scenarios where price basically, kind of pivoted off of this black line here, right? And it comes pretty close to our 50% retracement. To me, if price were to give a little bit more extension of a pullback there, this area may be a decent one to look for some signs of bullishness and to see if we can get some continuation to this longer term trend that we do see unfolding on gold. WTI Crude is our next one. You can see oil still selling off heavily and still kind of showing some signs of bearishness to continue. You can see we've got some support and resistance levels we can draw in, such as these couple different levels. It seems like we're just finding a top right here recently, even still finding bearish structure as we go along. And so for me, the biggest play that I'd be interested in mostly would be looking for retests of levels to where we could find some opportunities to sell. I really like this idea here at the 27.88 level. It gives a little bit deeper of a pullback, and it also gives a pretty strong area where there was support, resistance, and it held. So that would give me a pretty good confidence in taking some sort of sell trade there. Just my opinion there. Next up is New Zealand dollar here. New Zealand dollar and Australian dollar look very similar. We have some downward structure. And what you'll notice is that we're finding resistance along this trend line here. Now the big thing here is right now we see price wanting to see, can we break it, right? So we barely sold off of the trend line before coming back to retest it. The big thing here is, can this line break, or are we gonna hold it, right? If we see something like this, if we see a break above, that to me looks like a pretty good opportunity to see some continuation of this kind of budding uptrend that we do see on New Zealand dollar. But I want to look also at Australian dollar, because look, we can already see that it has broken out, and watching to see how this daily candle closes will be interesting, because I think it may lead to whether or not we get a strong trend from here or not. Because if we do see that continued strength, if we see a continued close that's very strong, I'd say there's a pretty good chance we see some continuation here to the upside. Now on the contrary, if we break back down and we see this candle actually close bearish, to me that would be a very strong indicator that price is probably going to continue its technical downtrend here on Aussie dollar. So we'll see what happens, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you back next time.